Disney, Nickelodeon, Cartoon Network. Long ago, the three networks lived together with us in harmony. Then, everything changed when the bad art style swaps attacked. Only a stylebender who's mastered all the art styles could truly fix them. But I guess we'll just have to settle for this jerk.
Hey, not long ago, Nickelodeon's official Instagram graced us with this shining beacon of artistic integrity. Appa looks majestic in any Nick style. How would you know? You didn't actually draw any of these art styles, you just traced literally the first thing that came up on Google and gave a couple of them third-rate wigs. I mean, just get a load of the 1,000-yard stare on this fairly odd Frankenstein. Now that's the expression of a man who knows he's zero effort engagement bait. But we can set this thing straight. Cartoon Network's Twitter refuses to be outdone, however. They've worked tirelessly to bring us style swaps that are nearly as unexceptional, from incorrect heights to incorrect hairdos. And we're only too happy to lend our checkered chums a helping hand as well. Now let's show them all how to really draw these art styles.
Coming to you from beautiful downtown Fortitude Valley, it's the Harry Gold Show, with your host, Harry Gold.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to the program. Nickelodeon is back, baby. Anyone who's been watching my little series on this subject knows that, for reasons modern science cannot fathom, Hollywood's cadre of cartoon kingpins adamantly insist on disgorging from their social medias one ill-conceived style swap poster after the other. Each depicts a character in what could only charitably be described as various cartoon art styles. And thanks to you thoughtful folks in the audience, I've been alerted to another 9 of Nick's finest. This time they've focused their creatively dubious crosshairs on Appa, and I don't mean the Alabama Peanut Producers Association. This is Aang's trusty flying bison steed from Avatar: The Last Airbender. Isn't a flying bison what they make buffalo wings out of? Anyhow, that means once again it falls upon me to do the thing they did, but less bad. I don't know if it even needs to be said at this point, but this dead-eyed, drunk-looking bugalo is clearly not actually Appa drawn in the Fairly Odd Parents' aggressively recognizable aesthetic. Instead, they merely tacked inexplicable fairy wings onto his lower back, and plastered Timmy Turner's forked hair talon over that colossal shaggy scone. Except, when stretched around Appa's big beige bowl cut, it really just looks like his stylist settled for the '08 Bieber special. The actual Dimsdale zeitgeist favors a sort of corporatized Picasso look, with more angles than an octagon factory, and the kind of enormous toothy mouth that could get them sued for trademark infringement by Julia Roberts. Those FOP outlines also prominently feature a style known in the industry as Eddie Murphying, you know, because they're black, fat on the outside, and haven't been popular since 2007. Is that a tiny screaming Muppet on its head or a decapitated chess bishop? Either way, Nick evidently couldn't even get this wrong correctly. They instead opted to huck Arnold and Appa in a blender, but rather than the former's usual post-it note coloured koala ears, this looks more like Appa had his DNA spliced with the sweet life of Zack and Cody. Now this swap presents us with a new challenge. Finding a good frame of reference for restyling animal characters can be tricky when some of these shows have the non-human population of an overzealous abattoir. But even then, the network's previous victims have all been heavily anthropomorphized, so at least their more humanoid features have reasonably solid points of comparison. Appa, on the other hand, is just a normal animal, at least as much as a magic malformed yak can be. He doesn't talk, wear gloves, or walk on his hind legs. His eyes don't even involuntarily vacate his skull when he's startled. That makes a mostly wildlife-free show like Hey Arnold a difficult exchange, and clearly our friends at Nick felt the same way, seeing as they didn't even try. We're left with little choice beyond using the show's human cast for reference instead, though Arnold and Appa's shared employment of extra-wide skull shape with eyes in 2 different time zones does help us out. On the one hand, it's nice that this is a new show we haven't seen Nick use in a style swap before. On the other hand, we still haven't actually seen them use it yet. This is just Appa. They've given him itty-bitty boggle eyes, but those quote marks on his elbows are just about the only sign we're not merely looking at normal Appa after googling himself without safe search on. Fortunately, The Wild Thornberrys does feature quite a few animals to use as reference, including among the main cast. And I don't just mean that absolute stallion, Nigel. But first, before we continue, this episode of The Harry Gold Show was brought to you by Skillshare.
All right, Chester. Fetch. You know, they say you can't teach an old dog new tricks. Shake, Chester. What am I supposed to do with this? But that's because they don't make Skillshare for dogs. Instead, it's for creatives. The largest online learning community, in fact. Roll over, Chester. I don't follow. If it was up to me, they'd teach lessons on how to catch frisbees in your mouth or catch that wise guy cat next door. One of these days, furball. But Skillshare would rather have thousands of classes led by industry professionals in art, writing, music, film, and all of that sort of thing. Maybe I'll watch Mr. Brent Everston's classes on the art and science of drawing. That way, even if I can't catch the dang ball, I can at least shade one pretty good. The first 500 people to use our link will get a 1-month free trial. Sit, Chester. Oh, I know that one. Good boy. Skillshare. Explore your creativity.
Otherwise, aesthetically, the Thornberry family are very typical of 90s cartoons. You know, ugly as hell. They've got stingily portioned eyes placed at equally miserly intervals, alongside that oversized, Klasky, Kasupo overbite which was all the rage in the Clinton years, for some ungodly reason. See those mushy Pac-Man pupils and insincerely cutesy 80s style cheek lines? That's how you know Nickelodeon has made the baffling choice to ignore their own Ninja Turtles productions in favor of basing a mashup on the show from nearly 40 years ago, which never even aired on their network. And it's not even the first time. That said, threading a bandana through the side of Appa's neck and wearing what appears to be a saddle crafted from Lucky the Leprechaun's hat doesn't really constitute the style in question. The titular pizza addicts aside, TMNT's animal contingent are essentially all their monsters of the week, a clique that any overgrown 18-toed Angus-flavoured beaver should fit into without much trouble. Protuberant muscles, irascible peepers, and anything else overtly steroidal are mainstays of Saturday morning villain chic, along with as many belts, straps, pads, and guards as you can fit onto a single mutant gym junkie. The one catch is, he couldn't be called something dopey like Appa now that he's been oozed. He needs one of those knockoff G.I. Joe action figure names, like Steak Knife, or Cattle Prod, or Buffalo, because he's like a buffalo, but he's also buff, get it? Buffalo! Anyway, let's take a quick break from all these airborne ungulates to check in with the latest from our boys in black and white. A small handful of you delightful denizens of X made sure to let me know that Cartoon Network was back to their usual malarkey, this time around focusing on one of their myriad of pink-encrusted blondes, specifically the grim adventures of Billy and Mandy's foremost diminutive misanthrope. I'd just like to say, I really appreciate all the folks who took time to let me know about all these style swaps. So long as you handsome devils are still interested in watching me redraw these things, I'm only too happy to oblige. As per usual, our friends at CN have got Nick handily outclassed. Who knew you'd be better at drawing different art styles if you didn't just trace the same art style over and over again? All that said, there is still room for improvement. So let's start with the obvious. While Mandy's proportions are admittedly a better match for Bubbles & Co. than usual, this is still simply not the PPG style. The townsfolk of Townsville come in all shapes and sizes, while only the girls themselves sport that bug-eyed, noseless ragdoll anatomy. Now, one of my other series is drawing Sonicified versions of pop culture characters, and some comments question whether this is hypocritical. After all, I've roused on Cartoon Network for shoehorning Jake the dog into the Powerpuff mold. How is that any different to making Dora the Explorer look like a Technicolor hedgehog? Here's the important thing though, and I can't stress this enough. There's nothing inherently wrong with drawing something as a Powerpuff Girl. If that was CN's stated aim, repetitive as it would be, we'd have no issues. But swapping art styles is just not the same task as designing a new member of an existing character group. The Simpson family's yellow skin and weird fused hair skulls are more unique than the vanilla matte graining fare. Drawing someone as a comic book character means a different costume and physique to making them a superhero specifically. And so, by this token, drawing someone as a Sonic OC specifically infers an overtly Sonic-esque animal character, rather than the original artist's style more broadly. All that said, the eagle-eyed viewer might note that TMNT Appa from earlier was quite heavily modified. In order to keep the art style recognizable, it is often useful to reinterpret characters as if they natively belong to their new universe. While a flying six-limbed cow monster would almost certainly only appear in the world of TMNT as one of the show's many mutant abominations, there's just no reason a human girl like Mandy would need to be one of Professor Utonium's superhuman creations in the realm of the Powerpuff Girls. Good constructive criticism is about intent, helping the artist achieve what they're trying to achieve, but the Animation Network's intent seems to be cutting corners. While the stated aim has explicitly been swapping styles all along, they often fall short. And that's where I come in, to kick them while they're down. This edified Mandy is honestly pretty decent. The outline can stand to be a little more neurotic, and the hands aren't quite large or repulsive enough, but overall the style is certainly recognizable. There are, however, a lot of oddly perfunctory costume changes here, as in several of these drawings for that matter. I'm seeing socks as long and white as a tapeworm's tube top, sleeves left, right, and center. Well, mainly left and right. And come on, neckwear? The girl doesn't even have a neck! Look, Cartoon Network, I get that screwing with characters' outfits for no conceivable reason is the national pastime in Hollywood, so you're really struggling to help yourselves here, but none of these styles necessitate wardrobe adjustments, so just take a deep breath, go for a walk, and buy a bubble tea or something. On top of making the Grim Adventures' gloomy little tritagonist a good deal lankier than she ought to be, CN has opted to change Mandy's hairdo almost completely. Like the aforementioned malfunctioning garb, spasmodic hairdressing is also a recurring motif throughout the illustration, and in my insurmountably humble opinion, a pretty colossal mistake. Mandy is clearly quite minimal in construction, and that misshapen saffron croissant on her head is key to keeping the design decipherable. Without that or the correct apparel, a lot of CN's attempts risk straying into just not looking like Mandy at all. And speaking of not looking like Mandy at all, this is obviously Dexter's sister Dee Dee with a scowl on her face and a baritone on her head.
Aprite un po' quegli occhi, uomini incauti e sciocchi.
As much as I understand the temptation to combine these characters, seeing as they both sport that same legally blonde color palette, it's clearly just not the pessimistic pipsqueak we're trying to depict. Not only should she be more vertically challenged, but Dexter's visuals feature a very streamlined geometric silhouette with an array of splodgy sausage fingers. Most of the right notes have been hit on this one, from that angsty reboot of Charlie Brown head to those ramen-adjacent limbs and shoes that'd be roomy on Shaquille O'Neal. But something's still off. See, these hands here are of a sensible and proportionate size to the rest of her body, and therefore completely wrong for codename Kids Next Door. Aside from experiencing bizarrely localized gigantism, the Ks from KND also have the correct number of digits on their distressingly large hands. That's number spelled without an R, like in the show. Duh. I've just now noticed their impression of a dumb illiterate kid makes you sound like an Englishman. What did Cartoon Network mean by this? While CN has more or less achieved Total Drama's bootleg Butch Hartman art style here, there's really just no justification for the anime-style time skip. Why would you make Mandy a teenager? She's surly and dead-eyed enough as it is. The polygonal anatomy endemic to this show tends to resemble Lara Croft by way of Danny Phantom, with a tendency towards unreasonably literal square shoulders, lips like a back-to-front bird beak, and fingers that look more likely to give a paper cut than get one. But now I must return to drawing inexplicably aerodynamic bovines. I have a pen, I have an Appa, Appa pen. Now this guy has seen some things. Give him a diaper and put a floating rattle in front of his open paw if you so desire, but making Appa a baby just isn't delivering. And he certainly shouldn't be standing upright. Half the human cast can barely do that, let alone the show's minimal zoological presence. On a related note, I've received a number of comments asking how I achieve an authentic, old handmade ink and paint animation look. You've seen it already in Appa in the Hey Arnold style and the Thornberrys style Appa, so allow me to demonstrate with Appa Rugrat style. Rugrat style. This might be the most cringe thing I've ever done, and that's saying something. Step 1 for aping old hand-drawn animation that's cranked out by a sweatshop in some cheaper Asian nation. Its roughness around the edges with dark brown discoloration, like a house plant post-vacation. This is my advice.
When it's time to ink the outlines, real cells weren't precise. Quickly scrawled for bargain basement wages, stretchy will suffice. And Photoshop's Carl Webster charcoal pencil works real nice for a crippling price.
Forever.
The color picker will get you quicker. Authentic fill.
Click.
From real show still.
Click.
Choose a section, expand selection, then fill it all.
Click.
And spill it all.
Click.
Now we're one step closer to what you could call
Oppenheimer style.
What? Oh, sorry about that. They put the wrong parody on the cue cards.
Oppenheimer style.
Now I become Nick, destroyer of styles.
Appa Rugrat style.
sharp. Won't look legit, that's subpar counterfeit, so Gaussian blur it just a little bit.
Duplicate fills and lines for true cell emulation. Blur those suckers till they're beyond identification.
Parent fills to line art and then crank the saturation, then
Put lines on coloration. Now we've got some bleed. To make it feel real, surface texture is what this will need. Grab a photo of a piece of paper and then we proceed. Crank the contrast, blend mode, multiply and raise transparency. Parent, now you see.
last add shadow,
Just like a real animation cell.
what?
Rhymes with shadow, that's Appa Rugrat style.
Hey, remember how Squidward is porous with piercing blue eyes, and Patrick is lemon yellow with a long nose? No? Why, in that case, it's almost as if being whittled out of dishwashing paraphernalia isn't actually the bikini bottom art style at all, and this right here is a sloppy corner-cutting mess. I mean, for the love of Tom Kenny, why did they cut his toes off?
Hey! Hey, Appa! Appa, hey! Hey, Appa, hey!
What?
Knife!
In fairness to Nick, what little they've earned, this is a difficult style to work with. SpongeBob is mostly focused on the life aquatic, so there's really not much in the way of enchanted floating livestock to draw upon. Even then, there's not a lot of aesthetic hard and fasts down by that pineapple under the sea. Scrawny limbs and the occasional coloured outline are probably the most consistent features the show has to offer anyone without gills, but these cramped oblong eyeballs and defined cheeks round a broad maw are also fairly par for the course. I hate to be the one to break it to you, Nick, but fat black freckles and unusually bristly armpit hair does not the Loud House art style make. Lincoln's family homestead does harbour a couple of pets amongst its extensive cast though, which is like winning the lottery for someone up to his tie clip in animal deficient art styles. They should be a great help in grasping the right approach, even if our subject is not quite as small or tethered to the laws of physics. The Loud look goes in for horizontally inhibited peepers and cavernous smiles, with a penchant for splotches of zigzaggedy shading. Once again we find ourselves looking at the cosplay conundrum. Doug's sneakers are kind of a recognisable part of his design, I guess. He's not exactly outpacing Michael Jordan for name association on that one. Regardless, they're hardly endemic to the show's designs more broadly. I know it's been a while since I've watched it, but I'm reasonably certain Patty wasn't born wearing Pepto-coloured Converse knockoffs. The sclera-free pupils and stinkline hairstyle are something more of a step in the right direction, but they're still not quite cutting the French's classic yellow on their own. The pet characters around Doug's neck of the woods are much more traditionally cartoony than those of its 90s compatriots, so an appropriately redrawn Appa would be intermittently bipedal and fully physically predisposed to comically anthropoid shenanigans. Alright, I've been putting this one off the whole video, but now my hubris has finally caught up with me. I said I'd fix all of these style swaps, and as a result, Nickelodeon has caught me with their trap card. You don't have to look too hard to spot some issues with this drawing. For a flying bison in the style of a show about giant robots, you will note herein a remarkable lack of either hovering beef or overgrown automatons. Instead, we have some kind of lumpy monster truck with no doors, no windows, no escape route whatsoever, that's decided to trade axles for stilts that plow right through the tops of its inexplicably rivet-riddled tires. Of course, the Autobots do turn into motor vehicles, but representing the franchise with a car is like buying a Happy Meal for the apple slices. The big problem here is not the sloppy execution, but the very concept itself. Every one of these swaps is a balancing act between staying as authentic to the art style as possible, while also maintaining recognizability for both shows in question. However, the only visually recognizable part of Transformers Earthspark is, shock of all shocks, the overgrown action figures in the title. The non-mechanical characters in this show are so unfathomably generic that no one could ever make the connection. And to boot, there's a complete absence of visual crossover between the Gundam-flavored gearheads and this big dumb flying wombat. So I really don't have much choice but to take some creative liberties. Looks like we are not beating those hypocrite allegations after all. Plus, the icing on this actually incredibly niche cake is that Transformers Earthspark is a 3D animated show, whereas I am but a humble drawer. The only ray tracing I can do is a Barone family portrait, so if I want this thing to look leastways authentic, my best bet is to Photoshop pieces of existing renders together into a new design. And after all that big talk about swapping art styles the right way too, me and my big mouth. Couldn't have just been classic Transformers, could it? Stick a toothpick umbrella in her, that's another bevy of hopefully improved style swaps. Done. You know, across the 4 videos I've now made on this subject, it's repeatedly baffled me that Nickelodeon would approve art of their IP so poor in quality. Something that looks that bad would never make it to air, so why would it be allowed anywhere else? But it's finally dawned on me. It's the same reason so many games based on movies are famously terrible. When E.T. came out, it was the highest grossing film of all time. Yet for the video game, Spielberg gave one guy a few weeks to make the entire thing. The result was so notoriously bad, it helped sink Atari and cause a whole market crash. Studios knew that video games were this hot new market that they needed to get in on, but at the same time, it wasn't a medium they actually understood or cared about. Thusly, they treated it as pretty unimportant and irrelevant. This is clearly how these studios also view social media. It's getting lots of eyeballs, but because it's comparatively new and not a part of the way they're used to doing things, they don't actually value it at all, and so refuse to give it the resources it would need to not be abysmally bad. Not that I'm complaining, the more lousy style swaps that get made, the more material I have to work with. So you know what, forget everything I've said in this video. Stay sloppy, Nick. I appreciate you. Let's play a game. I'll draw someone famous, then 3 people that guess who it is in the comments will get a shout out in the next episode. If your guess for the caricature last time was classic Hollywood actor Humphrey Bogart, you were absolutely correct. Bogey's rule from the Wheel of Winners is the first 3 correct guesses with the default profile picture. Lost Cause Lancer hasn't lost yet, clinching first place. NC was short for Nearly Champion, landing second, and Elmarm went out on a limb, coming up number 3. Well done everyone, thanks for playing. The stare on this week's subject is so dull that your local Department of Education is considering making you write a book report on it. Their nose is very thin and barely sticks out, like Timothy Chalamet at a broomstick factory. In fact, their whole head is so long that it has been at times mistaken for the music video to Michael Jackson's Thriller. Now who could this be? If you know who that was, let us know in the comments. And if you enjoyed the video, why not style swap that subscribe button into a subscribed button? But this has been the Harry Gold Show. So until next time, stay safe, and God bless.